Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Menachot daf Yud Aleph. We are at the two dots, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 7 lines down on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Let me share my screen and we will get started. So, um, one second, I did not prepare correctly. So hold on, here we go. And so here we go. Now I can share my screen. The Mishnah on Daf Vav and Aleph noted that if a Kohen accidentally includes a pebble, a grain of salt, or some lavona in the fistful that he takes in his kamitza, the kometz is invalid. Excuse me, is the kometz is invalid because it's not complete. And indeed, the next rule in the Mishnah is to say that a kometz that is deficient is invalid. So as we pick up with the two dots on the seventh line of Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the Gemara quoted this rule from the Mishnah and wonders why it focuses on the volume, meaning there's something else that's a problem if something else is accidentally included in the kometz. So let's take a look. We'll first quote from our Mishnah, Mibnei she'amra kometz chaser o hayater pasul, that if they said that if a kometz has too little or too much, it's going to be invalid. So my area mishum chaser v'yazer. Why focusing on too little or too much? V'tepuk le mishum chatzitza. Say that there's an issue if there's something, meaning even if there's the right amount, but you now have a stone in it, maybe that's going to be in and of itself a problem because it separates between, it creates a chatzitza between two things. Now, what is the chatzitza that we're talking about? Rashi offers two possibilities. So my area, take a look in Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. My area mishum kometz chaser tepuk le ditzror pasol mishum chatzitza. Rashi sort of adds in a little bit of context. Why not say that when it comes to the stone, it's going to be puzzle because it creates a separation, a chatzitza. As Rashi continues, dechotzetz ben yado lekemach. It separates between his hand and the flour. V'chatzitza poseles b'kadshim. And a chatzitza causes something to be invalid in connection with sacrifices. As we saw all the way back on Daf Kuf Dalet Amud Aleph in Zvachim 24a, Inami Chotzeitz Bein Kemach LeKemach. Or you could say, you know what the stone will separate between two grains of the flour. Kagon be'emtzah kometz, like if it's in the middle of the flour. V'cholik as a kometz. Venira kishnei chatzei kmatzim. It looks like it's two. It's regular flour, very, very finely. Usually it's fine flour with a little bit of oil in it, like they're making pancakes. Sounds delicious. And so, as a result, that's going to look like it's two separate kamatzim, and therefore it's not going to be kosher for that reason. So why not say that the reason that's a problem is because of the separation? So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah minatzad, we're going to say that it's from the side, and so as a result, that's the reason that it's going to be a problem. That we can't say that it's due to the chatzitza, as Rashi tells us. What does it mean minatzad? Lamala eitzel godel. So again, imagine. Again, we will see momentarily that we're dealing with a grabbing of flour in between the palm of your hand and your three middle fingers, and so you have this amount. And the point that there's being said is that now in this hollow of your palm of your fingers, between your fingers and your palm, that's where the kamitza is. And we're dealing with a situation, as Rashi says, that the above that near your thumb, or below it. Let's continue on in the Rashi. Lamala etzel godel, or lamata etzel kamitza, or below it next to your ring finger, down below your ring finger, near your pinky. So there, it's if you have the stone at that place, the leka chatzitza, dahainu minatzad. It's either stuck above or stuck below. So dela'achar shekamatz hovech gab yado lamata. After you do the kamitza, which we'll see is going to be done with your hand in this position, you're going to turn your hand so that your palm is up and that your back of your hand is down. Kedei shelo yipol min hakomet, so that nothing falls out. Now that you've taken the flour and you go like this, now nothing can fall from your hand because the three middle fingers are wider than the palm of your, are less wide than the palm of your hand. The palm of your hand can serve as the support to ensure that nothing falls from it, because if anything falls from it, it's going to cause the sacrifice to be puzzle. So minakometz klum, so that nothing should fall. Vahavi goldel ukamitza minatzad. And now, when you are holding it like this, the goldel, your thumb, and the kamitza, which is your fourth finger, your ring finger, and we'll see about the zeret in a moment, are going to be on the two sides of the kamitza. And so as a result, that's why it says minatzad. So
Kometz, the two sides of the kometz.
And now when you have the stone on this one of the sides here, between just to the if your hand is out facing you, it's just to the left of your ring finger or to the right of your pointer. So if the stone is in one of those two places, it's going to be next to the flour, mutal atzwar, aval chasaran ika. So there won't be a chatzitza, she'etzal kemach mutal atzwar, because the stone is next to the flour, not mixed into the flour. But there still will be a chisaron, because that stone is still taking away from the space of that the flour would be in. And so as a result, that's still going to be a problem. So that's why we don't use the language of chatzitza, but instead use the language of chaser and yaser. Okay, so Amrle Abaye Larava Ketzad Konsin. So I sort of gave you some of the answers of how we do the kamitza, but now we're going to go through it in more detail. And so Abaye asks Rava, how do we do the kamitza? And Amrle Kedekamsi Inshi. People just grab. You grab, the way you grab anything. That's what we're going to deal with. We're going to be talking about grabbing. Now, based on this statement, Rashi says, next Rashi, keep your finger in Rashi. Frankly, it's probably wise to do. So it's the next Rashi. It seems like you're supposed to grab with all your fingers to figure out what to create a kamitza. But Rava says, 1 second, we have a brisa that goes through all of our 5 fingers and tells us what they're important for. So Ezo Zeres. So the pinky is called the zeres, and Rashi explains, again, keep your finger on Rashi, although I'm going to not keep my finger on Rashi because I'm going to hopefully use my hands to show you what we're talking about. Zeres, etzba ketana, that's the small finger, namely the pinky. Mimena matchil hazeret, and from the pinky, that's how you measure the zeret. Now, what is the zeret? V'nafkamina lemidas choshen zeres arka. That when it comes to the measurement of the breastplate of the Kohen, we're told that it is a zeret wide. So a zeret is from the pinky to the end of the thumb. And so as a result, it's essentially a hand-wide measurement. Okay, so, and then after the pinky, we have zu kamitza. So the next finger is the kamitza. That implies that the kamitza begins with this ring finger and not your whole hand. And that's going to be what contradicts Rava's response. So that's why Abaye is asking him from this brisa. This brisa suggests that the kmitza is the fourth finger, as Rashi says, is zo kmitza, mimena matchil hakometz, me oto etzba, she'etzel hakatana. From the finger that is next to the pinky, that's the one that begins the measurement of a kometz. And then zo amma, the middle finger is the amma, because if you want to measure an amma, you measure it from the elbow to the top of the middle finger. And so that's the amma. As Rashi says, keeping on continuing Rashi, mimena modadin kol amot habinyan v'hakelim. This is how you measure the amot of buildings and vessels. Lefishehi arukamikulan, because the middle finger is the longest of all the fingers, and so that's the one you use to measure from the elbow to the top of your hand. Ushtei amot hayu b'Shushan habira shtei maklot. There were two sticks that were in Shushan in order to show what an amma was. Shehein amma, that were both the measurement of an amma. Ubahen modadin amot habinyan va'otan maklot nimadu ba'oto etzba shehu aroch. And how were they originally created? Basically, they created a standard amma measurement based on a basic stick. It's sort of like there's a stick somewhere, I think in the UK, that is the standard measurement of a true foot. Same basic idea. And so as a result, there may be something like that also for a meter, but I'm not sure. But in any event, the bottom line is that they had these measurements, these sticks in Shushan, and they were the basis for our measurements of an amma. So that's the third finger. Continuing on back into the Gemara, zo etzba. We go to the next finger. That's the etzba. That's your pointer. And Rashi tells us, zo etzba, l'tavel hakohen etzba obadam. That's the finger. When the Torah says that you dip the finger in blood, that's the finger. You use your pointer. And finally, zugodel, the thumb.
When we say etzba in this week's or last week's part, or etzba Elohim he.
Yeah, well, that would be that's essentially saying the finger of God. But the question is sort of what exactly that means is not necessarily clear. But you're absolutely right that's the reference to etzba in that case. But obviously that's not. I'm not sure whether there's a practical relevance that it's the particularly the pointer. But in any event, Zugodel, Rashi tells us, Leboa note, that Demitzoreth, it's to tell us that that's the finger that is used, and then when we say Bohen Yado Viraglo, that it's the big finger of your hand and your foot, it's referring to the thumb, and that's the finger that the blood is put on. Alma kamitza bekometz velozeres. And so the point was of going all through this, that when you measure a kamitza, you use your ring finger as the limitation, not the pinky. So what did you mean, Rava, when you said that you use your whole hand? Ela hashvos. Nah, the point is that you use every finger in your hand, even though the measurement is of the middle three fingers. You're going to use the pinky finger in order to equalize and level out the flower on the one side, on the pinky side of your hand, and you'll use your thumb to level out the flower on the pointer side of your hand. So hechi avid. So how do you do this? So Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav Chofesh Shalosh Etzbaot. You put your hand into the flower and you close your middle three fingers. Ad shemagia al pas yado, until the fingers touch your palm, the kometz, and then you scoop, and whatever it is, that's what the kometz is. So, and then you grab it. So Tanya Nami Haki, and we have a brisa that teaches this same idea. Milo kumtso, a full kometz. So yachol mivoratz. When the Torah says in Vayikra Perek Bet Pasuk Bet, it says Melo Kumso, a full handful. So I might have thought that it needs to be an overflowing handful. It needs to be completely full, really full. So Talmud Lomar Bikumso in his komets, and so as that's a pasuk, a couple prakim later, Perek Vav Pasuk Chet, and that teaches no, it needs to be in the komets. So ibikumso, if I would have just had bikumso, yachol barashe apsposav, I might have thought that you can even do kamitza just with your fingertips. So rather than bring your fingertips all the way to the bottom of your palm, maybe you could just do a little bit of flour and just do to the top of the palm. So you're only effectively using the tips of your fingers. So tamalomer malokum. So no, you have to do it a full amount. And so ha ketzad chofish shalosh etzbaos av al pas yado b'komet. So you're supposed to put the three fingers in. You go all the way around so that it goes to the bottom of your palm, and you've grabbed it. So b'machavas u'marcheshes, and when it comes to the machvas and marcheshes offering. So Rashi says, why do we talk about those two? Well, you take a look at Rashi 5 lines up. Dema'aseyen afuyan. That there, when you take the kamitza, you have this bowl of flour. The flour in this case is actually going to have been baked. The Amr lekamen beperak elu menachos nikmatzos. So daf ayin heyam a bet. De la achar shehen afuyan potchan v'komets. That after, I'm sorry, potatan v'komets. After you bake it, you then crumble it back up and put it in the container. And so hilkach efshar lepotatan dakot kolkach. You can't turn it back into flour. Flour is very, very thin. You could grab it and it will almost be almost like a liquid. But when it comes to crumbled bread, that's not like a liquid. It's going to have more pieces sticking out. And so kishahu komates, and so when you do the kamitza, yotzot chutz l'mekomo, there's going to be some sticking up and some sticking down. And so that's why you're going to use your thumb against the stuff that's sticking up and your pinky against the stuff that's sticking down. And hilkach mochek begodlo milamala, you're going to use your thumb to smooth everything out from above. Ubeetzba'o ktana, and you're with your little finger, your pinky finger, milamata, you're going to do it from the bottom. So that's the explanation. And so as a result, so mochek, big, and back into the Gemara. So it was saying exactly as is classic with Rashi. Rashi uses it weaves in the words of the Gemara into his commentary to help us understand. So back into the Gemara, and we're now second to last word on the first wide line of the Gemara. Mochek begodlo milamala ubeetzba'o milamata. Right, so you're going to use your thumb to smooth everything out from above, and your etzba'o katana, and your little finger from below. So zohi avodah kasha shebamikdash, and this is the most difficult service in the Beis Hamikdash. 1 second. Zau v'sulo. This one is the most difficult, and there isn't anything that's more difficult. V'ha'ika malika. What about the killing of birds that is done with the thumbnail? That's pretty difficult. V'ha'ika chafina. And then also in the Beis Hamikdash, there was the chafina on Yom Kippur. The Kohen Gadol would need to create two handfuls. He'd need to somehow carry the ketoret into the Kodesh HaKodashim, but then he needs to somehow measure from the pan into his hands to get to two handfuls. So he's going to end up using his teeth and his arms and his elbows and just try to get everything into the handfuls to fill it up. So those are very difficult. So Ella Zohi Achat Ma'avodah Kashot Shebamikdash. No, what we mean is that this is one of the most difficult services. It's not the only difficult service, but it's one of. Okay. So Amarav Papa. All right. So 1 second. Let me scroll because I realize I haven't scrolled. So All right. So now, Rav Papa now discusses the Kmitza, further clarifying the procedure because he's going to say, "So I'm a Rav Papa. Pshitali melokum so kidikamsi inshi." It's clear to me that if you do the regular way, and Rashi says kidikamsi inshi, third line down in the widest lines of Rashi, machnis sidei etzba osav, you have the sides of your fingers enter the flour, the dochek bekemach, and then and it pushes away some of the flour. The kemach nisnach betoch yado, and then you're going to do this, and it will be inside your hand. So that is how you would ordinarily do it. So by Rav Papa, kamat barashe etzba osavmai. What's the story if you use the fingertips? So shehichnis roshe etzba osav bekemach. Instead of sticking your hand in like this and curling your fingers, so your hand, the side of your hand goes in first, like a karate chop. Instead of doing it like that, you stick your fingers in and you scoop the flour. Bekemach bepas yado klape kemach, with the palm of your hand downward facing towards the flour. The kometz malekumso ad pas yado kedatiknu mau. So the question is if you stick your hand in like this and then scoop like that, and now you have the three fingers and you wipe it off and now you've got it and you turn it over, is that also going to be kosher? Again, the way you're supposed to do it is, well, you have to be careful. So you're supposed to do it like a karate chop. And so the question is, if you do it fingers down first and you scoop like that, is that going to work? Question number two, min hatzdadin, if you do it from the side. And Rashi tells us, shehichnis ketores bechafnav derech bein godol etzba. If you stick in, if instead of you curling your fingers after they go into the flour, you curl your fingers before they go into the flour. So you stick your hand in like this, and so it's already curled instead of like the karate chop. Or that's what one explanation. Lishnachrina min hatzadin shakli. Or alternatively, you use the side of the vessel to help you create the komets. So what's the story in that situation? Mimata milamala. Or if you go from I'm sorry, Minat Studin, I read the wrong Rashi. There's two Rashis Minat Studin. So Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 5 lines down. Shenatan gav yado al hakemach, that you put your hand, the back of your hand, into the flour so that the flour goes above your hand. V'holach yado ad shenichnas hakemach derech tzido. And so now, as a result, by pushing down on the flour with the back of your hand, the flour will now go up on the sides. And because flour is somewhat viscous or liquidy, it's going to go over your hand on both sides. And so that's what it means by coming from the side. And then it says, that you can use the side. That you don't choose to do the scooping from the middle of the vessel, but you do it from the edge of the vessel. So those are the two possibilities of minat studin. So, and milamata milamala, and then from the bottom to the top, that you stick your fingers into the flour, the gav hayad keneged hakemach, and the back of your hand is they can use your help mark. So, and the back of your hand is towards the flour, the kometz, and then you scoop. So again, so you're sticking your hand in like this. I can't quite do it because I'm sitting down. You stick your hand in like this, and then you scoop with the three fingers. Talk to you later. And then you clear it out and you level off the edges. So what if you do it in all three, one of those three other ways? Again, either you do it with the tips of your fingers, sticking your tips of your fingers in, or you do it with the back of your palm down, or you do it with the sticking your fingers in, but with your back of your hand up. I mean, with the palm of your hand up. If you do it in any one of those three ways, so what's the story? So teku, it's not answered. We don't know the answer. So Amar of Papa pshitali milochaf nab kedechafne ishne inchi. So similarly, Rav Papa says, you know what it means to be handfuls full hands. It means exactly what you think it means to have two handsfuls. So by Rav Papa, chafin barashi etzbo sav mahu. What is the story if he uses the tips of his fingers? Uminat stadin mahu and chafan bezo uvazo the kervan zo etzel zo mahu. And what's the story if you did it from the side? So let's go through those situations. So again, if you do it from the fingertips, again, it's sticking your fingertips in and then creating the cupped hands as opposed to pouring it into your cupped hands. And then the second one is what if you do it from the sides? Again, same basic idea, but now that we'll do the Rashi that we did before. Shehechnis ketoris b'chafnav, right? The ketoris enters his handfuls, derech ben godel le'etzba, between his thumb and his pointer. So he sort of like enters it like that, and so he's using it to sort of scoop. So what's the story if that or lishnachrina minat stud and shokli, or he does it from the side of the vessel? So meaning he sticks his hand into the vessel rather than pouring from the vessel into his hand. So again, and the last category is you have two single handfuls and then you combine them. So what's the story in that situation? So again, teku, it's left unresolved. Again, this is the Maloch Hafnav associated with the Yom Kippur service and creating the two handfuls of Ketoris that is done in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So by Rav Papa asked, Dabke b'lekometz b'dafne demana mai. What now? After we set up the komets in our hand, there is a requirement to put that komets into a new sacred vessel. And Rav Papa asks, what if you were to, instead of putting it in the bottom of the vessel, right? The vessel has a bottom, and you put it in all the way to the bottom. Instead of putting it all the way to the bottom, it's a dough. So there's a stickiness to it. So as a result, what happens if you stick it to the side of the vessel? Do we say tokli be'inan, that you need it to be inside v'ha'ika, and it's inside, so everything's great? Odilma hanaka b'toko be'inan, or do we need no? You need to put it in the bottom of the vessel, v'leika, and that isn't. So teku, that also is unresolved. So by
how do you ensure this is the powder, whatever.
No.
It's
Remember that there's
mixed
oil
with
mixed
oil.
in.
It's mixed with
Correct.
oil. So it's
Correct.
a powder mixed with oil.
Yeah, so it's
So
like a
therefore, if
dough.
you put your now generally, if one is making bread or cookies, whatever, you put your hand in the dough. Some of the dough sticks to the fingers. How do you ensure that those bits of, and are you getting the full comets? That's the second question I have,
So
because
you have to be sure. You have to make sure that you get rid of all of it. And by the way, I have the answer to your Lavona question, which we'll do at the very end of today's daf. So stick around. So yes, I mean the bottom line is you need to make sure that all of it gets out. Now the good news about oil is that if it's an oily doughy mixture, you should be able to have none of it stay attached to your fingers. I mean, I haven't done this in practice, but the oil should facilitate some level of separation between the fingers and the dough itself.
but not necessarily. And also, then there'll be oil on your hands remaining, right?
Yes. The oil might, I mean, clearly something is going to still be on your hands. The question about how we wipe off what's going on, what's on your hands, hopefully we'll get some element of that, but we have not gotten the answer to that so far. But the bottom line is if you end up sticking it to the side of the vessel, it's still going to be a doughy kind of mixture. And just like, if you make cookies and you stick them on a pan and then turn the pan upside down, they'll usually will stick to the pan. That's why you need to add some oil to the pan so that you don't have the cookies stick to the pan. Some kind of slicking material you need to do in order to avoid the cookie sticking to the pan. So too, here we don't have that slickness, and so as a result, you can end up sticking the dough to the side of the dish. And the answer is we don't know whether that's going to be sufficient. Now, by Marbar Rav Ashi, the last question before we get to the Mishnah is Rav Ashi asks the following: Havche lemana v'dabke b'lekometz ba'arita demana mai. What happens if you turn the vessel over? Now, sometimes a bowl will have an amount, a little bit of a rim that serves as the base of the bowl. And so as a result, even if you turn the bowl upside down, there will be some kibble, some receptacle component to it on the bottom. As Rashi says, Ba'arita demana, Kagon Shahaya Likli Beit Kibul Ma'acharav. The back of the vessel or the bottom of the vessel has a space to receive something on the bottom. Kamosha Yesh Bekaros, as is often the case with certain kinds of dishes and bowls. And so, what's the story in that situation? Do we say, look, you put it into the vessel, and so as a result, v'ha'ika, and you got that, odilma katikno be'inan, or do we need that you need to put it in the correct bottom of the vessel? It's not the bottom of the vessel whichever way the vessel is. There's a top side and a bottom side, and if you put it on the bottom side, that's not going to work either. So teku, again, the Gemara doesn't answer that question.
Well, what
Okay.
does that exactly mean? There's a bottom side and the top side of the vessel. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, again, imagine a bowl that has as the base to it a circular stand almost. So, or think about like a
A
kiddish
little
cup.
cup with a ridge with that stand sort of indented
Correct,
on the
correct.
base of
I
the
think about
cup.
my kiddish cup, which has like a base to it. That if I were to flip it over, when I wash the kiddish cup, I have to make sure that the water comes out of the base too. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So we're dealing with something that has a receptacle component to it. It could receive, if you pour water in it, it'll stay there both on the bottom and the top. A lot of mugs have this issue. We have sort of it in our dishwasher. If we wash a mug in our dishwasher, we have to be careful because sometimes, even though the mug is facing downwards, the top of the mug can end up holding some of the water. So that's what we're talking about, where there's a receptacle on the bottom. So, okay, and again, we're not sure whether that will work. So, Ketzad Hu Osa. So the Mishnah asks essentially an abbreviated version of the detailed question that we just went through. How do you do it? How do you do the kamitza? Poshet es espasov al pas yado. Again, you extend your fingers over to your palm, and so you create that kind of area. And again, we went through more detail in the Gemara, and so since the Gemara has already gone through that detail, it's not going to go through that detail again. Riba shmana shamna, if you increased the amount of oil in it, or chisar shamna, or you diminished the amount of oil in it, chisar levonata, or you decrease the amount of levona in it, psula, that mincha is going to be invalid. Okay, so the Gemara wonders, Hechi dami riba shamna. What do you mean by increase the oil? So Amar Rabbi Elazar. So this is Rabbi Elazar. It's according to this both Shita Mekubetzes and the Masoras Hashas. It shouldn't be Eliezer, but rather Elazar. Kagon shehifrish la shnei lugin. Well, you're supposed to take one lug for a mincha offering, and now you took two, so you took double. So, one second though, why did you need to give that as the example, Rabbi Elazar? The lukma kigon de ariba shemen de chulin v'shemen de chavirta. Why not say that you added additional oil, either that was not sanctified or that was for another sacrifice, meaning that it wasn't supposed to be. Why not say those two things? Are you telling me that in fact, if you were to do those kind of additions, that would not be a problem? Because if you tell me that, I'm going to warn you something. Because if you tell me that other oil being added to it is not going to create an invalidity. So Maskiv lo Rav Zutra Bartuvia, we have a statement of Rav Zutra Bartuvia who said the following: Elameata, if you were to say that, Minchas Chote de Pasal Bashemen. We know that a Minchas Chote is not supposed to have any oil or lavona in it, but if you do add oil to it, it's going to be invalid because remember we saw the idea that we want the mincha of the sinner to not be something nice. And so as a result, don't add oil or lavona to it. And if you do, it's not going to be kosher. So how, in what case would adding the oil make it not kosher? Edida, because if you're saying, well, the person doubled the amount of oil that's supposed to be in it, like what Rebbe Lazar said, halesla, there is no oil that's supposed to be in it, so there is no oil that you could double for it to be a problem. So that can't be the problem. And if you're telling me, well, you added oil from that was not sanctified or oil from another korban, Ha'amarta, the lo pasul, you just told me that that's not going to cause it to be invalidated. So we'll skip the parenthetical. And so that's the question. How can you end up with that situation? So for Rabbi Lazar, lo mi bai kamer. Nah. So you're not understanding Rabbi Lazar's point. He wasn't saying that only doubling the oil is going to be a problem. He was saying that even doubling the oil is going to be a problem. Certainly adding oil that's not sanctified or oil from another korban is going to be a problem. But even if you were to set aside 2 log of oil, so you might have thought that since each one is fit for it, aim a low lift, so maybe we should not cause it to be puzzle at all. Kamash Milan. That's why Rebbe Lazar says is not only if it's foreign oil, but even if it's the oil that was supposed to be and you just doubled it, that's going to be a problem.
What's the minimum shear? Is it maybe
A
one and
log,
a half,
a
one and a
log,
quarter?
a log.
No, no, that's no, no. But what would be considered the minimum shear of an extra? Now,
So the
an
minimum share,
example. The
if in
Gemara's
fact,
example is 2, but what if
if
it
in
gives one and a half or one and a quarter?
So the implication is that if you were to do 1.5 and you were to have dedicated it for this mincha, it seems like that will be okay because you didn't do 2 full. And so as a result, it's still all right as long as you haven't done 2 full because until you get to that second, it's not a full, there's not truly extra. There's not enough for a second one. So imana like Rebbe Elazar ha. How does Rebbe Elazar know this? Amarava masnisin kshite. No, he gathered this from the Mishnah. My area detani riba shamna. Why did the Mishnah specifically say that he increased its oil? The oil, listen, a riba la shemim. It should have just said that he increased for the sacrifice the amount of oil. Why does it seem like you're increasing the oil that's specifically associated with that's already been associated with this sacrifice? Ella hakak mashmalan. This is what it's teaching about. The aval gav the hivrish la shnei lugin, that is going to still be a problem. The implication being that if you don't have double, if you have less than double, but as long as you have a log, you're okay still. Because again, the log is sort of like the minimum amount, and we recognize that you can accidentally have a little bit more. And so we're not going to say that it's invalid until you get to twice the amount. Okay, so now we're at the 2 dots, 3rd line from the bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Chiser lavona, we said that if you reduce the lavona, that's going to be a problem. So where Gemara now quotes a brisa related to the reduction of the lavona that includes 2 opinions that are not like our Mishnah. So even though you're going to say, hey, none of this is like the Mishnah, because our Mishnah seems to suggest if you eliminated any, if you reduced any levona, it's going to be a problem. So Tana Rabbanan, Chasra v'amda al koret echad psula, al shnei kartin kshera, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if the levona got reduced, but you still have at least one unit, one element of it, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. You need to have two pieces of it. Rabbi Shimon Omer al koret echad kshera. No, you need at least one. So this is actually giving me an opportunity to. I'm going to stop sharing right now. I'll share my screen again in just a moment to show you the picture of the Livona, and so that you get a sense of what it might have looked like. So here we go. Here it is. Now I got it. And so let me share my screen. So here is what maybe it looked like. And again, it's called Livona because of its white color. This is, and you can imagine. So you have these pieces that have these like resin-like pieces. So this also answers the question from yesterday about how you can wipe it off, right? Because you can just these are, it's almost like little pebbles, and so as a result, that's how it can be relatively straightforward to remove it from on top of the flour so that you only get the flour and you don't take up any Livona. But it also now helps us understand what the story is with the particles of Livona. If you've got one or two of these, depending on whether you're Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon, that's going to be sufficient. But according to Rabbi Shimon, if you had one of these and then it broke off, so you don't have a full one, so then that's going to be a problem. So that's the story with respect to the Livona, and that answers the question from yesterday about making sure that you move the Livona to the side so that you are able to do the kamitza without any of the Livona getting into it. So
Well,
now
why is it a problem if it's broken off as opposed to a full piece?
what was that?
You said if it breaks off and you got a piece,
That's
why would
that's
that be a problem versus a whole piece?
So that's according to Rabbi Shimon, right? Rabbi Yehuda says not, you need two particles, and if they're not two particles, it's going to be invalid. Rabbi Shimon says you need one particle, and if it's less than that, it's invalid. So those are the opinions. And of course, our Mishnah is not like either of those opinions. Our Mishnah is that if any of the Lavona goes missing, it's going to be a problem. We'll see that that's Rabbi Meir very shortly, but now we're going to focus on these two alternative opinions. So we have that Brisa that now says these two opinions as we turn to Yud Aleph Amud Bet, Vatanya, but we've got another Brisa, and Rashi tells us, Tanya, top Rashi on Yud Aleph Amud Bet, Kemeduma li da'iri ba Rabbi Shimon. It seems like this is actually the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in that Brisa. Kaparach minala Rabbi Shimon. And so we're asking from one Rabbi Shimon to another Rabbi Shimon. That in another place, in this other Brisa, even though again, the Aleph tells us that you're not supposed to have this language of Rabbi Shimon Omer, the implication is Rabbi Shimon Omer. So, Kometz Vilavona Shechasar Kol Shehu Pasul. So the position in this other brisa is that if you're missing any amount, it's going to be invalid. So, of course, that's like our Mishnah, and we're going to now, we'll see that, in fact, that opinion is Rabbi Meir. But here, this brisa, we're asking this brisa because it seems like that's the position of Rabbi Shimon. So in one place, Rabbi Shimon says anything that's missing is invalid, and in another place, you can miss all of it as long as you have a particle. So, two possible answers. Tani koret levona shechisar kol shehu puzzle. No, what it means by any of it is missing is as long as it's missing from the particle, from one particle, and that's all you have is one particle. Or alternatively, kan belevona haba im hamincha. One case, the first case, namely, you can have, as long as you have one particle of levona, that's sufficient. That's when you're bringing a levona as part of a mincha offering. Kan belevona haba b'fnei atzma. But if one were to make a commitment to bring levona alone to the Beis Hamikdash as an offering, so then you can't be having anything missing. Any amount that's missing is going to be a problem. As Rashi tells us, Levona haba ima mincha, Im chasra b'shas haktara kashera l'Rebbe Shimon. That according to Rabbi Shimon, if at the moment of the burning you're missing some of the levona that you started with, it's totally fine. As we are about to see momentarily today on today's daf in this same sugya, mikol halavona that we share al hamincha. The Torah says, the Torah uses the words from all of the levona that is on the mincha. So what does it mean, mikol hamincha? We're going to see that as the end of Rashi is going to explain what that means. V'hai de katani chaser kol shehu pasul. And so we'll see that what that means in a moment is mikol means that as long as you have a little bit from it, it's going to be sufficient. And when we say the second brisa that says that any amount is missing, pasol bilavona habab b'fnei atzma, that's talking about lavona that comes on its own. Kagon haomer, like somebody who says harei alai lavona. If I say to myself, I'm committing to bring Levona to the base of Migdash, Yaveh Mole Kometz, he has to bring a Kometz full of Levona. Levona al hamizbeach. He needs to bring a kometz full of levona onto the altar. Perek Omer Harei Alai Saron. That's according to the perek that we're going to see. Daf Kuf Vavam Ebed. Dahasam Vadai Chaser, because there a puzzle that there, if you have anything missing, because you have essentially committed to bring a certain amount, if you fail to bring that amount, well, then it's not valid and you have to do it over again. Delo ksivbe the eskol halavona, because it doesn't have the language of eskol halavona or mikol halavona. De yalfina mina, as we are going to see momentarily, lekaman shortly, kol afilu kol afilu kol shehu. When it has the word kol, it means even a little bit, and so as a result, that shows that when it comes to, according to Rabbi Shimon, and that if you have, when it comes to the mincha offering, as long as you have one particle of levona, you're fine. And according to Rabbi Shimon, if you're bringing the levona as a separate offering, you need a full kometz full. And if you don't have it, so then if you're missing even a little bit, it's not fine. And so that's the distinction. So now we have three statements by Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that address the need for the levona to be present and help clarify our machlokes and reintroduce the position of our Mishnah, that is Rabbi Meir. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shalosh Machlokot Badavar. There are actually three opinions. We just saw two of them, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, but there's a third, which is our Mishnah itself. Rabbi Meir, Savar, Kometz, Batchila, Kometz, and so. You need a full Kometz of Levona in the beginning and at the end. Meaning, in the beginning, when you pull the kamitza of flour out of the container, and you make the new kamitza of flour, there needs to be in that container a kometz of levona. And at the end, there needs to also be a kometz of levona. Namely, when you burn the kometz on the altar, when you burn the flour on the altar, you need to have that full kometz. So Rebbe, and let's take a look at these at three Rashis in a row. It's the next
Didn't
three
we learn
Rashis.
that you have to remove the levona so that the kometz you have to move it aside?
Correct. You have to move the kometz to the side, but it needs to stay in there, and it needs to still be the full amount. And then we'll see that you use that you need to have a kometz also when the kamitza that you took. When you take the kamitza, you're going to do the kamitza. It's going to also, and you burn that kometz of flour. You need to have the kometz of levona there as well. So Rabbi Meir, Stam Masnisin, Diktani Choser Levonosap Psula. He is the author of our anonymous Mishnah. And so as a result, that's the position of our Mishnah. Kometz betchila. What do we mean that there needs to be a kometz at the beginning? Bishas kamitza. At the time that they take the kamitza, be'inan sheyeh bekli male kometz levona. You need to have in that full container the kometz of levona. Ubaha kula modo. And everybody agrees that at that moment you need it. Demitchila by komets. At the very beginning, you need to have a komets. As we are going to see at the very end of this Maseches Daf Kuvav Amabet, we're going to see that you need to have a full komets of lavona when you do the kamitza at the very beginning. And as Kenneth Pert pointed out, you need to, of course, move the lavona, the komets of lavona, to the side so you don't accidentally take any of that komets of lavona in the kamitza of flour that you take. Now, that is obviously very confusing, and that's why I try to go through it as slowly as I can, because the bottom line is you have this komets is a measurement, and the kamitza is the action. So the komets besof, and you take a komets at the end, and you need the komets at the end. Bishas haktara lavona shelo texar. When you go ahead and you're going to burn the lavona that was in that container, you're going to burn it with the komets, with the kamitza that you took. You're going to now have to burn that komets of lavona, and so that also needs to be a full komets. So you need both it to be full when you take the kamitza, and you need it to be full when you burn it along with the flour. Rabbi Yehuda, okay, and now we go back into our Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Sabar, we're now 7 lines down in the Gemara on Yud Aleph Amabet. Rabbi Yehuda Sabar, Kometz B'tchila D'Shnei Kratim B'Sof. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't, again, he agrees, like as Rashi told us, that everybody agrees that you need a full komets when you take the of lavona, when you take the kamitza of flour from the container in the very beginning. But when it comes to actually burning the komets, as long as you have 2 particles, that's going to be sufficient. Rabbi Shimon Savar komets betchila v'koret echad b'sof, and Rabbi Shimon says no, you need a komets, a full komets of lavona at the beginning when you take the kamitza, but when it comes to burning, as long as you have 1 particle of lavona, 1 full particle of lavona at the end, that's going to be sufficient.
But you're not burning them together.
What?
You're not burning them together, right? You're just burning the komets of the flour of the.
No. From what we saw in Rashi, it seems like not only when you eventually burn the kamitza, you're going to burn it with the lavona that you had originally taken.
But you separated the lavona, right?
You did. You did. You're going to have to put it back together.
But you've already burned the flour.
No. Remember, the process is the following. Again, and we have not yet gotten to the details of how we get everything back together. So I can't, I'm learning this the first time with you guys. So I have not, I'm not familiar with the total procedures. But it seems like you put your hand into the flour oil mixture. You do the kamitz. Well, first of all, you have the lavona on top of the mixture. You move it all to the side so that you don't actually take any. You then push your hand into the middle of the flour pile in the vessel, and then you take the kamitza. You do engage in the kamitza. So you take a komets and you wipe off the bottom and the top. And now you move like this, and so you now have the kamitza in your hand, and none of it is spilling. And then you go and you put it into another vessel, another kli sharet. And then after that, we're going to take what is in the new kli sharet along with the lavona that you had taken and is in your original vessel, and both of those are going to go on the mizbeach. How we do that, we have not yet detailed, but that is what Rashi is saying. So both of those are going to go on the fire, and the machlokas that we're dealing with is how much needs to be on the fire for everything to be kosher. Do we need to have a full komets of lavona? That's Rabbi Meir. Do we need to have 2 particles of lavona? That's Rabbi Yehuda. Or do we need to have at least 1 particle of of lavona? And that's Rabbi Shimon. That's the machlokas that we have. Everybody agrees that in that original pot, in that original container, in the original kli sharet, when you move the lavona over and you take the kamitza, there definitely has to be at least a komets of lavona at that moment. But what happens when we burn it, that's what we're still figuring out.
Has one actually measured the komets of lavona, or is it an estimate?
It seems like at the moment that you would actually take a handful of lavona and put it onto the top, but we haven't gotten to that process, so I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like you would measure it. Of course, you have to measure it, because if you don't measure it, then you wouldn't know, according to Rebbe Meir, that you have all of it there. So ushloshta mikra echad darshu, and all three of them are learning from one vessel, from one pasuk. Excuse me. Because and what's that pasuk? The pasuk is Vayikra Parak Vav pasuk Chet. Ve'es kol halavona asher ala mincha. That you have all of the lavona that is on the mincha. So Rabbi Meir Savar ad isa lavona deikava bahadi mincha meikara. You need all of it. It says all of it. You need all of it. No, the Rabbi Yehuda Savar kol vafilu chad korit. No, kol doesn't mean all. It means any. And so Rabbi Yehuda says any means one. But es l'rabos korit echer. But the word es, which wasn't necessary because it says the es kol halavona instead of the kol halavona, the S kol halavona, the S comes to tell us that you know what, you need an extra particle. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda says you need two particles. The Rabbi Shimon S lo darish, he doesn't learn from the word S, and so as a result, he's not going to say that you need two. He says kol means any, and therefore one is sufficient. So that's the three-way makloket. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So now we have a second statement of Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Machlokas bilavona haba ima mincha, that our machlokas is only about the lavona that comes with the mincha. Aval bilavona haba b'fnei atzma, when you make an oath to bring lavona on its own, divrei hakol, kometz b'tchil, kometz b'tzof. You have to have a full kometz, both when you set it aside and when you actually burn it. So ulahachi itzrich asher al mincha, and this is why we say asher al mincha. The words asher al mincha is telling us the bahadi mincha in. When we say kol means any, that's only when it comes with the mincha. But ubifnei atzma lo. But when it comes all by itself, well, then we don't use the word any, but you need to have all. You need to have the full kometz, and therefore that's how both Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda would explain these verses, and so as a result, that is why all three of Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Shimon would agree that if you commit to just bring Lavona, not separate from bringing a mincha, not off as part of a mincha, you would need to have a kometz at the beginning, meaning that when you set it aside, and a kometz at the end when you actually go ahead and burn it. For Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef.
Is that considered a valid mincha offering just to bring
No,
lavona?
no, it's not a mincha offering; it's a lavona offering.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, machlokas belavona haba ima mincha. That the machlokas is only when you have the lavona that comes with the mincha. Aval belavona haba bezichin. But the lavona offering that is part of the shnei halechem, the lechem hapanim. I didn't mean shnei halechem. I mean lechem hapanim. That divrei hakol shnei kamatzim betchila ushnei kamatzim besof. That when you would have these two spoons that would be next to the showbread, and those two spoons would be present during the week, and we would burn it at the end. And so as a result, you need to have them both at the beginning and at the end. Pshita. Once again, it's obvious. Once we've learned that al hamincha, asher al hamincha, means that specifically the lavona with the mincha can be deficient, of course you're going to need all of it when it comes to the lechem apanim. Not necessarily. Mao de tema, kevin de bahadi lechem asya, because this lavona comes with the bread. Kasher ala mincha damya. Maybe I would think that it's like and the lechem apanim is considered very much like a mincha offering. I might have thought that this lavona is considered asher ala mincha. So kamash malan not so. So as a result, it's not considered that, and that's why Rabbi Yitzchak needed to tell us this statement as well. Pligi ba Rabbi Ami Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka argued about something that we had as an opinion above. Chad Amar machlokas b'lavona haba ima mincha. One says that the machlokas is only with respect to when lavona comes with the mincha. Aval b'lavona haba b'fnei asma. But when lavona comes by itself, there's no machlokas. Divrei hakol kometz betchila v'kometz besof. Everybody agrees that you need it at the beginning and at the end. One says, no, you don't make the drasha that we saw just a few moments ago, but rather the same machlokas is in both cases. And again, that's a different opinion. That's an opinion that contradicts Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So we then said chiser levona sa, that psula, that if any of the levona is missing, then it's going to be puzzle. Ha yater kshera. Once again, does that imply that if you have more, it's going to be kosher? Vatanya yatir psula. We have a brisa that specifically says that if you have extra, it's not valid. So Amarami Bar Chama Kagon Shehefrish La Shnei Kamatzim. Now, you're right, it is going to be invalid. The brisa that says it's invalid is referring to where you take twice as much, meaning very much like the oil. If you were to dedicate the oil specifically for this carbon, but you don't dedicate it as twice the amount, so you don't have double the amount, it's still going to be fine. Similarly, when it comes to the lavona, if you don't have double the amount, but rather have just a little bit extra, it's going to be also fine. Rabbi Chama makes another statement. Hifrish la shnei kamatzim. If you set aside two kamatzim, so v'avad echad mehen kodem kamitza, and you lose one of them before you take the kamitza, lo hukbu. It was not dedicated as part of the mincha, and therefore the mincha is going to be valid. Achar kamitza, but if you lose it after you already take the kamitza, after the kamitza is done, hukbu, you've already made this extra lavona part of the sacrifice, part of the mincha offering, and now you have too much because you have double. So as a result, it's not going to be a kosher offering.
What was the Avamina to think it's kosher if you added two in the first place?
Well,
Once you added double, then
this
it's
is
not
just this is just confirming the statement. This is just providing details with respect to timing of Rami Bar Chama's statement that when we say it means too much, it means double. So he's now saying, when is it too much? If you have too much and you haven't yet done the kamitza, you're okay. Even as long as you lost it before you did the kamitza, or you removed it before you did the kamitza. But once you did the kamitza, now if you have too much, that's the moment of problem. So V'amar Rabbi Bar Chama, Hifrish Arba Kamatzim L'Shnei Bezichin. If you do the same problem, but with respect to the kamatzim that you need for the komets, komatzot, whatever, the kamatzim, the two different komets is that you need for the lechem hapanim, and instead of doing two, you do four. V'avdu shnayim behen kodem silik bezikin, and you lose two of them before you do the removal of the spoons, because the removal of the spoons is like the moment of kamitza with respect to the a regular mincha. Lo hukbu, it's not going to be a problem, and it's not going to have been established, and therefore it will still be kosher. But la'achar silik bezichin, but if you had too much in those spoons and you had four kamatzim instead of two kamatzim in those spoons, and you remove them, you've already established it, and you've done too much, you've done double, and therefore the lechem hapanim is going to be disqualified. Hatulamali, why did I need him to tell us both? Hainuhak, it's the same ruling. No, it's not the same ruling, because Mao de Tema, Kavan de Burir Kometz Dida, we already saw a few days ago that when it comes to the lechem hapanim, there are some people who say that as soon as the moment in time has come for the removal of the spoons, then it's as if the spoons have already been removed. And the reason for that is based on the following idea. Because we know exactly what's going to be removed, we can treat it as if it's already been removed. And so therefore, I might have thought that if you have four kamatzin of lavona in those two spoons, and you got to the point in time where you're allowed to remove those spoons, maybe we should treat it as if you did remove those spoons, and therefore the four kamatzin were already established as part of the lechem hapanim, and therefore the lechem hapanim is not kosher. So, Kamash Malan, we're not going to say that. No, we don't follow the moment in time that you could take it away. Instead, we follow the moment in time that you do take it away. And that's when you determine whether or not there's too much lavona present. Only when you take it away. And so as a result, if it gets fixed before you take away the spoons, even though the time to take away the spoons has already come, you're still going to be okay, and the lechem hapanim will be valid. That brings us to the next Mishnah, which continues well into Yud Bet Amud Aleph, and so we're going to stop there for today and pick up with the Mishnah, God willing, tomorrow.
The last statement seems to disagree with what we said earlier. I mean, where if the Lavona is already put too much and he does the kamitza, then it's not valid already. But here, if you leave them fixed on the lechem apanim, it would be valid.
Remember, the Kmitza moment for a traditional mincha is equal to the moment that you remove the spoons. So the answer to your question is no, they're completely comparable. If until you remove the spoons, you don't have too much lavona. Only when you remove the spoons, if you remove the spoons and you have too much lavona in it, that's when it's too much lavona, and that's when it's going to be puzzled. Just like until you do the kamitza and you have too much lavona, it's not a problem yet. If you do the kamitza when you have too much lavona, it's going to be a problem. And so we don't focus. The question was, the havamina was, maybe you would focus only on the time of removal rather than the actual removal. And the answer is no. According to Rami Bar Chama, you focus on the actual removal.
Uh, um,
Okay, so that's why. So they are in fact exactly comparable.
you
All
said
right.
earlier, you said earlier that some places you go slower if it's a little confusing. I, I don't, I don't know. Can you go any faster? I mean, I don't know. It seems you go pretty fast.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, this was a daf that took a little over an hour. So and there are plenty of daf yomis that finish in 40 minutes. So I'm trying to balance the two. So which is why I'm happy to stay to answer questions as well and include it as part of the recording. And people can stop the recording as soon as we finish the daf. But if they want to have questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
This is a rather important one, though, and it details exactly how this is done.
I'm sorry, we'll say that again. Oh, yes, it was
Yeah,
an important doc because
this
it
is an
really,
important one, though. It
yeah, because
details
it really,
exactly
if
how these
it's
procedures are
really a
done.
fundamental doc for understanding how the Kmitza is done. So that it was worth going a little, again, it's still fast, it's still daf yomi, but a little more slowly to make sure we understand how to do it. Again, put your hand in sideways. You do the three fingers. You wipe off at the bottom. You wipe off at the top. You turn your hand this way, and now you've got your kamitza. You put it into the other vessel, and then we're not sure how we go from there, but it seems like you then take from the new vessel and you take some the comets of the lavona that is in the thing in the original container. And again, because it's the particles that I showed you a few moments ago, you can literally pick them out, presumably, and then you put them together, and it all gets burned on the mizbeach. That
Yeah,
seems to
one
be
thing
this.
I may have missed. You may have said, how large are these pieces of Lavona?
Not completely clear. They seem to be again, I'm not, let me just see whether we can, I'll share my screen again of the picture. This is the question is you can't tell whether this is microscopic or but it seems like these are smaller than a penny. Maybe this one is bigger than a penny, but maybe bigger than a pebble. They're pebble-ish in size, they
That-
seem to be.
we should order some and see what the.
Yeah, we could.
Send me the link.
You got it. Let me put the link in the chat. Hold on.
Yeah,
Here we go.
I actually cook with a different resin, Hiltit or asafoetida or hing.
Really?
It's
All
a
right.
very important in Indian cooking, and it's pretty much impossible to find it with a hechsher. I've not had a rabbi been able to tell me whether it needs a hechsher or not.
All right. Well, I'm not definitely not opposed to going kashrus. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you have already asked Rabbi Linzer, I'm out of suggestions. Although you could call the OU. The OU
Well, actually,
hotline.
I found some about 15 years ago that had an OU, but it's no longer available.
Ah, okay.
And we're
Well,
still
you
using
can,
it.
if that's in fact the case, you can call the OU and ask them whether or not they think it needs the hashgacha because they obviously certified the process at one point.
At one
So
point, yeah,
they may be able to help with that respect. All
good
right.
point.
Have a great day, everybody. Looking
Thank
forward to
you.
continuing our learning together.